What's up everyone? So in today's video, I will be answering the most common fitness question which everyone who goes to the gym have, that is, how many repetitions of a particular exercise should we perform so as to build muscles? So to give you a better clarity about the rep ranges which we have to do so as to build muscles, I will be dividing this video into three parts. In the first part, we will be looking into what the theoretical values have to say depending upon what is published on the different certification boards such as the NASM, ACSM, NSC and many more. Then we will be looking into what the researchers have to say about these rep ranges in terms of the muscular size gains and hypertrophy. And in the third part, I will be concluding this video by giving you the best rep range to build your muscle mass based upon the theoretical values, the researchers' value, and based upon my experience with self-training and training others. And as we discuss the different rep ranges, we will be looking the 5 parameters of a particular rep range. The first parameter would be the ease of form and technique. How easy it will be for you to perform that exercise in the rep range with a good form and technique. The second parameter would be the CNS burnout, which will be looking into how fatiguing the exercise is for your central nervous system, which means that the mental fatigue induced for a particular rep range. The third one would be the overall exhaustion and the recovery time which would be necessary after you perform the certain number of sets with that particular rep range. This will help us to estimate the time which will be required for us to recover after we perform the exercises in that rep range. The fourth parameter would be the dominant energy pathway which will be required while performing the exercises in that rep range, whether it's aerobic pathway or anaerobic. That also we will be looking here. The fifth one is the dominant pathway of hypertrophy, which is induced when you are performing that exercise in that rep range. So the pathways are mechanical tension, eccentric damage and metabolic stress. So eccentric damage will be happening depending upon your tempo, so we are not including that here. We will be talking about the mechanical tension and the metabolic stress. So the mechanical tension is the tension provided into your muscles when you lift weights. You already know that when you increase the time under tension of performing that exercise, you can induce more muscular growth. So the mechanical tension will depend more upon the weights which you are lifting. So the metabolic stress is the phase which you might have observed when performing the exercises into when you move on to the later reps. So there you feel the burning sensation in your muscles. That's the stage when metabolites gets filled up in our muscles, and if we push that burn and continue further, then the metabolites such as the lactate, phosphates, hydrogen ions and many others gets filled up in our muscles, and the blood circulation is also very high there, but the oxygen supply starts reducing. This is a state called as hypoxia, and if you continue further at this burning stage, that is the stage called as the metabolic stress, where you are providing the metabolic stress into the particular region of your muscles. So according to the studies, this stage also induces some anabolic effect for our muscular growth. Now let's look into the different rep ranges which the certification board has to say and their benefits. So let's start with the lower reps and then let's move on to the higher rep ranges. So 1 to 5 reps at an intensity of 85 to 100% of your 1 rep max. 1 rep max is the amount of weight which you can lift for 1 repetition with a good form. So at this stage when the repetitions are low and the weights are high, you will be training your maximal strength and the power. So the maximal strength is the capacity of your body to lift as heavy as it's possible for you. Even if it's for less reps, it's fine, but it should be in a controlled manner. And in case of the power, it's the ability of your body to use that strength as quick as it's possible for you in an explosive manner. So for all the explosive movements, even for the athletes who are involved in more of the explosive power phases, for them these repetitions are useful. And since the load here is around 85 to 100% of your 1 rep max, so the weights are very high here, so you will be performing very less repetition, that is 1 to 5 reps. So at this rep range, you will be increasing your maximal strength and the power, which is the burst mode strength. So these kind of rep ranges are generally used by the power lifters and the athletes who require some explosive strength. You might have seen the power lifters, their particular aim of training is to lift as heavy as it's possible for them. So these rep ranges are generally reserved for these power lifters. Now let's look into the 5 parameters. So the first one is the ease of form and technique, which won't be much easier at this rep range because the weights are very high. To perform the repetitions in a controlled manner, you will require a lot of practice here, so it's not so easy. So the second parameter is the CNS burnout, which will also be high here because you are lifting very high weights. You might have seen a lot of people getting fainted when they are lifting very high loads even for 1 repetition. That's what the effect of these heavy weights is on our mental exhaustion. That's why to increase your weights when your repetition is low, it's very difficult. You have to train a lot and for a very long period of time to move on to a heavier weights. The third parameter, which is the exhaustion and the recovery rate here, is not too high when compared with the higher rep ranges. You can see that you will be recovering faster at this rep range, and even in the studies it has been seen that the exhaustion here is slightly less when compared with the higher rep ranges. So the energy system for this rep range would be derived from the ATP PCR system, which is an anaerobic energy pathway which is produced using the creatine phosphate or from the ATP which is already been stored in our body. Since this movement is lasting only for 20 to 30 seconds, that's why this ATP PCR system will be activated when you are performing the exercises in this rep range. And the dominant pathway for inducing the muscular hypertrophy here would be the mechanical tension. As we already discussed that the weights are high here, so it will be providing more tension into your muscles, given that you are performing the exercises with a slow tempo and a controlled manner. Now let's move on to the next rep range, which will be 6 to 12 reps. In most of the books and the certification boards, they mention that this is the rep range for hypertrophy. That is, if you want to increase your muscle mass, then you should always train at a range of 6 to 12. But by the end of this video, we'll be figuring out whether this is the only rep range to build your muscles or not. So according to these books, if your goal is to increase your muscular size, so this is not a functional goal, this is just an aesthetic goal, which is increasing your muscular size, then you have to train at a rep range of 6 to 12, which most of the bodybuilders generally do. Now since we are performing higher repetitions, that is 6 to 12 reps, so the amount of weight which we will be lifting will be slightly lighter, which will be in a range of 65 to 85% of your 1 rep max. So now let's look into the 5 parameters at this rep range. So in case of the ease of form and technique, I would say that it won't be that difficult because we are not going into extra heavy weights here, but the weight would be at a medium range, so you will be able to perform your repetitions at this rep range in a good form and technique, even if you are at a intermediate or beginner level. The central nervous system burnout will also not be too heavy here because again the weights are less and the repetitions are more. In case of the exhaustion and the recovery rate, it won't be too much. It will be in between the higher rep ranges and the lower rep ranges. Here the pathway for inducing the hypertrophy would be in between the mechanical tension and metabolic stress, because here the weights are not too heavy, but since the repetition has been increased, it will also be inducing the metabolic stress. That's the reason why the bodybuilders generally use this rep range, because you are getting the benefits of both the mechanical tension and metabolic stress by staying in this range. And also the exhaustion and the recovery rate here is not too much. So they might be thinking that at this rep range, it will be easier for them to recover for the next session on the next days. And the dominant energy pathway which is utilized by our body while performing the exercises at this rep range would be anaerobic glycolysis, which utilizes the carb storages and the glycogen storages in our body to give us the energy in the form of ATP. But here there is some byproducts such as the lactate and hydrogen ions which are also produced in our muscles. That's the reason you feel that burning sensation when you are doing the exercises in this rep range. So according to the certification books, I would say that this rep range is ideal for building your muscular size. But by the end of this video, we'll be looking at whether this is the only magic rep range to build your muscles or not. Now let's see what these certification boards have to say about the higher rep ranges. So when you are training at a rep range which is more than 12, or even it can range from 40 to 100 also, there you are working on your strength endurance. That is the ability of your muscles to sustain particular amount of stress at a certain intensity for a long duration of time. But here the intensity is slightly less, that is around 40 to 60% of your 1 rep max. But the goal here is to increase the endurance of our muscles so that it can endure that intensity for a long period of time. So the basic aim of this rep range is to increase your strength endurance, overall lactate threshold and your VO2 max. That's the reason why this rep range is generally used by the marathoners or other athletes who want to increase their overall endurance power. Now let's look into the 5 parameters at this rep range. So the ease of form, I would say that it will be very easier for you because you are using weights of very low intensity. So you are moving with the lighter weights for high repetitions. So I don't think there will be any difficulty in the form and technique while performing the exercises at this rep range. The central nervous system burnout will also be very low here. So mental exhaustion and tiring will be very less since the weights are very low here. The third parameter, which is the exhaustion and the recovery rate, is high at this rep range because you are using a light weight but you are doing a lot of repetitions, which is inducing some metabolic stress, and the exhaustion and the recovery rate required after performing the exercise at this rep range would be slightly higher when compared with the previous two. That's the reason why bodybuilders generally don't tend to use this rep range. I think that way. And even with my experience, I can say that the exhaustion rate is very high. I performed 1000 repetitions of bicep curls with a 5 kg dumbbell. And for the next 4 days, I would say that it was very sore on my biceps and I was not able to perform the movements which involved a lot of biceps. Now the dominant energy pathway which is utilized while performing the exercise at this rep range would be the aerobic oxidative system, which utilizes the oxygen to provide you the energy. That's the reason why you can perform a lot of repetitions, since here the energy is provided by the oxygen itself. So you can go on doing the repetitions until your muscles burn out or there is less amount of calories to provide you the energy. The fifth parameter, which is the dominant pathway for inducing muscular hypertrophy here, is the metabolic stress. So the metabolic stress, as I already mentioned, is the metabolites which gets induced in our muscles when you are doing very high repetitions. So these metabolites gets accumulated in our muscles and they create a situation of hypoxia, since the oxygen supply in our blood for that muscle is also less during this time when you are performing very high repetitions. So according to the studies, these metabolites also induce some anabolic effect which leads to muscular growth. So we can't say that these lower rep ranges won't help us to build muscles, but there are some science and studies which states that it induces the metabolic stress, which is also a pathway for increasing our muscle size. Now, as we have looked into the different rep ranges mentioned in these certification books, let's compare them with the research and studies and check whether these rep ranges holds true or not. So let's look into this 2017 meta-analysis performed by Brad Schoenfeld, who has been regarded as the master of hypertrophy. So in this study, they compared the individuals training with lower repetitions and higher repetitions to check the changes in their maximal strength, muscular hypertrophy and the muscular endurance. And it was concluded that if you want to increase your maximal strength, it's obvious that you have to train with heavier loads for lower repetitions, because the strength adaptations and the CNS burnout is different when you train with the heavier loads for low repetitions. You can't build your maximal strength in your bench press by training with 20 kg barbells for almost 10 to 12 reps. You have to start lifting heavier barbells around 100 to 200 kilos if you want to increase your maximal strength. And also in case of the strength endurance, it was seen that when you start increasing your repetitions with lower intensity, it is beneficial for you to increase your overall endurance, since you're training that muscles to endure that low intensity for a longer duration. So it makes sense that by increasing your repetitions, you will increase your overall strength endurance. But in case of the muscular hypertrophy, the results were somewhat misleading in comparison with these certification books. So according to this study, it was seen that there wasn't a significant difference in terms of the muscular hypertrophy or muscular size gains for the individuals training with the lower repetitions and higher repetitions when their sets were taken into momentary failure. So from here we can conclude that the 6 to 12 repetitions which has been mentioned in this certification board is not the only rep range if you want to increase your muscular size. But we still need a lot of studies in this topic, because with this study, the failure point, the efforts and the overall intensity was not taken into consideration. So even in the conclusion of this study, it was written that they still need more evidence, but the myth of training in the 6 to 12 repetitions to increase your muscular size has been debunked. So to support this study further, we have to look into another study which compared the muscular fiber recruitment between the individuals training in a lower reps and higher reps. And it was seen that there wasn't a significant difference between the muscular fiber recruitment between these two individuals when their sets were taken into momentary failure. So according to this study, it was seen that when you are training at a lower rep range with the higher loads, the muscular fiber recruitment is more. So you are getting the complete muscular fiber recruitment of the slow twitch as well as the fast twitch fibers. And the potential of muscular hypertrophy is more with the fast twitch fibers. So whenever you are getting the recruitment of the fast twitch fibers more, you will see more muscular hypertrophy. And in case of the higher rep ranges, initially there was more recruitment of the slow twitch fibers since the demands on the muscles were less. But as you move on with more repetitions and reach towards the failure, it was seen that even that fast twitch muscles were getting recruited. So finally with this study, we can say that the overall muscular fiber recruitment was similar when their reps were taken into momentary failure. So based upon this study, we can relate with the previous study and we can say that the 6 to 12 repetition is not the only range to increase our muscular hypertrophy. Now based upon these outcomes, let's look into the practical approach and how we should train to increase our strength, muscular hypertrophy, or if we want to increase our muscular endurance. So the final conclusion here would be that if you want to increase your maximal strength and power output, it's necessary that you move on to the heavier loads with a low rep range. That will help you to increase your overall maximal strength and power. And if you want to increase your muscular endurance, then you have to move on with the lighter loads for higher reps. That will help you to increase your overall muscular endurance. And when it comes to increasing your muscular hypertrophy, you're not limited to only the 6 to 12 range. You can use both the higher rep ranges and the lower rep ranges if you want to increase your overall muscular size. There is a constant battle between the mechanical tension and the metabolic stress when you move from lower rep range to the higher rep range. But whenever you are training in between these rep ranges, you are getting the benefits of both the mechanical tension and the metabolic stress so as to induce the muscular hypertrophy. So it's not necessary that you should always stick into the 6 to 12 rep range to increase your muscular size, but it's necessary that you combine these different rep ranges so as to bring new stimulus into your muscles for muscular growth. So if you are an individual who has always been training into 6 to 12 rep range, if you increase your repetitions, then you will see some difference in the muscular stimulation and it will help you to induce some new pathways for muscular hypertrophy. You should try that. And if you have never trained with the heavier loads for low rep range, that will also induce some different muscular stimulus and it will help you to get some massive gains that you have never experienced while training in the 6 to 12 range. So the whole idea about this video was to debunk the myth of training only in the 6 to 12 rep range to increase your overall muscular size. It's not like that. You can always keep on combining the different rep ranges to get the maximum benefits of gaining your muscular size. That's the reason why I compared both the researchers and the traditional certification books, what they have to say regarding the rep ranges. Because whenever you look into the theory, you will always find that the 6 to 12 rep range is always the ideal for muscular hypertrophy, but that is not the case when you move on to the practical approach. You can get the benefits in all these rep ranges if you train smartly and combine all the different rep ranges as we discussed till now. And if you have further doubts on how to combine these different rep ranges into your training routine, then comment down below. I will make a separate video on that. And if you found this information valuable, then like this video, share with everyone and subscribe to my channel for more such informative videos on workout and nutrition. So we will meet in the next video. Till then, stay supple, stay strong.